We have a guest joining us in the studio today. We have two senators coming back to back. The first senator is the senator for Nyeri County. His name is Wahome Wamatinga. He joins us now. Senator, good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you very much. I'm actually quite fascinated to be here. I've never been here before, and actually it's quite a new experience looking at how expansive this place is. And when I was told about this, I thought to myself, what's that? And now coming in here, I thought, how comes I didn't know about these people? Then I just realized just how little I haven't traveled this country. And yes, I say this is a good thing, seeing Kenya. We actually do not talk about ourselves too much. There is a lot that we've achieved, but I think we concentrate too much on the bad things and too little on the good things. So everybody believes out there Kenya is all about bad things, but this is quite a good piece of investment, and I would say congratulations.
Kabisa. Asante sana, karibu sana. We call that the hot seat of the Situation Room. Make yourself comfortable. It's going to be warm.
Thank you.
You're here because you're the chairman of the Standing Committee on Energy in the Senate, and you've been busy. We've been talking about, the reports coming out of your Senate committee hearings every day. Today there's a story. Yesterday there was another story. You'll be telling us all about that.
Yes.
Cost of electricity, energy has been high and has been going up in the country for a while. And that's why we want to have you here. Your name is Wahome Wamatinga. Yesterday, when I mentioned your name, CT and Ndu asked, okay, wait, which one? Because you see, we're used to Wamatagi.
Yes.
And the senator, Kemani Wamatagi.
Yes.
And then there's Wahome Wamatinga. And then they ask, telling them, we've changed names, Bana, in this country.
So he is of the what exactly?
He is of the, yes.
The
tractor.
Yes. Yes. Actually, that's quite interesting how I got the name. When I came back from Germany some years back, I lived in that country for 20 years. And I came back into this country and I realized that we had a very big gap in terms of actual skills. What we've been doing, me included as parents, we've been pushing our kids to take up university degrees without caring whether those are employable skills. And I started up a company, and then I found that I could not get skilled labor. And I realized that there was quite a very, very huge demand. So I started a school, a technical college called Institute of Applied Technology, that did not ask you what qualifications you had, so long as you were 18 years old, you had an ID. And then we started training people on operation, maintenance of these heavy equipments. As you saw this, when this superhighway was being constructed, you saw some young ladies pushing and driving, operating very heavy machinery.
Yes.
Most of them were my trainees. I have managed to take so many to Israel when Cartels was building up their stadiums. We actually give them a lot of machine operators, both men and women, and it became like a landmark. And I thought to myself, this is a good idea. And we opened another branch in Nakuru, we opened another one in Karatina, and people started referring to me as Wahome Wamatinga. So, that Wahome
the
who
one
has
who's helping people to...
And it became a name, and I somehow like it because it left a very huge footprint in my life. And when I'm asked what have you achieved so far, I would say I was able to change an industry that nobody ever thought about. And today there are quite a number of people doing the same thing. When I started that, people told me it can't work. It's too expensive. You'll not even get customers. But today, it is one of the leading institutes training people without caring where you've come from, whether you've been to school. And we'll train you from certificate to artisan to diploma to degree.
Right.
And that is a good thing. That's how I got the name.
Institute of Applied Technology.
Yes.
We've heard about it. It's good now to see where the Wamatinga comes from.
Yes.
Okay. City, now you get it? Wamatangi is for drums. Wamatinga is for tractors.
I am actually fascinated.
Yeah?
I'm actually fascinated. And you are right, Senator.
Yes.
There are many, many, many good things that happen in this country. And there are very, very many people in this country who have applied the energy and time to achieving wonderful things, but we never hear enough of it.
Indeed.
Yes.
Impacts.
Yes, we fill our minds with things that are negative, and unfortunately, most of them are associated with the place you work in.
Yes, true.
And the people you work with.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Well, I think we Kenyans did one mistake. We left this country in the hands of politicians. I happen to be one right now, and I can tell you, as we're sitting, as you've mentioned, light free in this energy committee, You can see some of the people, we are sitting, some of the committee members. We are there with Senator Olekina. We are there with Senator Sifuna. We are there with Senator Oburu. But we are so united, you will not even believe that we are the same people when we get to the chamber who scream at each other. You will not believe that. Because united to the cause of knowing that energy is one of the key enablers in any economic. And if we need to develop this country, which we all agree that we need to, then we must ensure that the cost of energy comes down. There is no way we are going to attract investors here while the energy becomes unaffordable. So moving forward, and we agreed, we sat down and agreed, it is not on the streets, it's not throwing the stones, it's on the table, where we start engaging with each other, where we have a carried conversation and we start asking us, where did the lane start beating us? And then what unites us even more is that we realize all these IPPs, the independent power producers, that have been put in place, some of them as long as 20 years old, the stakeholders are all the same. These are the same guys, these are the same cartels who own the coffee industries, who all control the tea industry, who control the milk industry, who control the banks and the insurances. And we realized, hey, we've been fighting the long battles. We've been fighting for the long causes. And we said, let's have a united front in this one. And I can tell you, moving forward, once we conclude this, we'll come up with procedures and we'll come up with recommendations. And most importantly is, we are telling these investors, as much as you've been invested in this country, you're generating power using diesel. One, you are killing the future of our children. That is one thing. The other thing is you're milking Kenyans dry because the contract is coined in such a way that whether you produce, whether we take or we don't, we still have to pay. So it means like our die is cast. But then the question is it not maybe cheaper to terminate some of them, pay the damages in terms of penalties, save our environment, and maybe introduce newer, more efficient, and maybe even environmental friendly energy. The question is, what is the cost of our polluting our energy? To some of us, we cannot pay for it. It's too expensive. Then that's the candid discussion we're having. And I can tell you, once we're out of that chamber, when we're not senators, when we are Kenyans, we can do a lot of things.
We can do a lot of things together.
But by the time we get back to the chambers and I have to push for the interest of my party, they have to push for the interest of their parties, then we become politicians.
Then we become other things.
Yes.
All right. Our conversation has been set up nicely to be nice and hot. City, please welcome the senator formally with the day's proverb.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week and our weekends on Friday are from the country of Burkina Faso. Okay? The land of honest and upright men. Okay? If you haven't been to two marketplaces, you don't know which the best value is.
If you haven't been to two marketplaces,
yes,
you don't know what the best value is. What's your interpretation of that, Senator?
Well, it's actually, we have something quite, something which is very, very similar to that. He who doesn't go out there believes it's only the mother who cooks well. until you go and taste another woman's food, then you realize your mom is not as good as a cook. You know, lack of exposure will lead you to making the wrong decisions. You need this exposure so that you can come and say, yes, I saw it elsewhere. The way I would interpret it, and the way we apply it here in Kenya is, and that's exactly brings me back to the point where we started. We talk too little of the good things and concentrate too much on the bad things. Some of us who've lived out there for 20 years, traveled to many countries, gone to so many places. We know that in so many things we do so well, but we do not talk about it. We choose to concentrate on the bad things. But we need to maybe see the bad things elsewhere so we can say, this country, we are blessed with a lot of things.
We are better than many.
But then we need also to see others who are doing far much better than us. We say we can still improve our living.
Okay.
And that is where we are.
Senator, so you've given us the background of, your thinking behind starting these investigations into the cost of power. Why are you only focusing on the independent power producers, or is this broad?
Well, let me put it this way. In most countries like Ethiopia, I'll give you the example of Ethiopia. They do not have a single independent power producer. They had assigned one to produce 1,000 megawatts, and then they terminated. If you look at the companies that produce power here, independent power producers, especially the ones using thermal generated power, they are the most expensive. Why we want to interrogate this is because if you look at the ownership of some of these companies, they are owned by who's of this country, the political class, the power that was. So what it meant is that the contract was skewed to favor them for the next 2 decades. And that's why we're saying, let's try to see whether we can see a loophole. And in some of them, we've seen very, very big glaring loopholes, commitment of omissions of fact that was supposed to be considered, contractual matters. We've seen one particular one where Kenya Power Pension Fund is a shareholder of an IPP. They are selling power to Kenya Power. The pension fund of the employees of Kenya Power is a major shareholder. Look at it this way. If you are a shareholder in my company, then you'd be hell-bent to make sure that I don't make any losses, because my losses would mean that you have reduced dividends. That is already a conflict of interest, and we're going to look at it. How did the shareholders even decide that they want to invest in this power producer? Why not look at the Kenyan? Kenyan produces 70% of the power.
Yep.
They are paid 30% of the cost of power. IPPs, independent power producers, they produce 30%, they take up 70% of the cost. If you are to interrogate what is the cost.
What does that mean?
That means that...
so let's start with the production.
Yes.
So you're saying that if you look at the energy mix and who is supplying power to Kenya Power,
yes,
Kenyan is supplying 70% of the power that we have in the grid.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And this is from... hydro stations,
geothermal
stations.
Mixed, it's also a mixed portfolio.
They also have some solar.
Yes.
They have some thermal as well.
Yes, yes.
In terms of this heavy fuels. They also have heavy fuel stations.
Yes.
But then they combined, they do 70%.
Yes.
But in terms of the cost, this is how much Kenya Power pays to purchase all this. They only pay 30% for the 70%. And then the 30% is costing 70% of the total bill for Kenya Power.
Yes, and this 30% is produced by independent power producers.
Not including Kenyan.
No, we're not including Kenyan. Kenyan does 70% of what we consume, IPPs 30%. But in terms of costs, it's exactly the other way around.
Opposite.
So the question is, if we shut them down, if we sit down and say, let's pay them off, let's pay the damages, let's pay the liquidated damages for shutting them down. What is the cost of the environmental pollution that they are causing? That would be the first question. Then we're asking ourselves, what is the cost of erasing the carbon trace they are leaving back, the footprint of the carbon? What would be the cost of that? If we look at all those factors and come to the conclusion that it will be cheaper to terminate, especially the thermal one, then I think it's a decision that needs to be had to be made. And it is a hard decision, but it needs to be made, especially looking at the sustainability of look at it this way. Climate change has become not only a topical issue. Kenya, we've seen it. The last couple of years, we've faced a drought that we've never faced for the last 40 years. And we're saying this is because of climate change. And we are saying we want to fight for climate change, environmental conservation, and we must start looking at where we are getting that. Dirty energy is one of them.
Senator, even as you look at this and we say, okay, there are many things, there's a myriad of things that are happening as a result of these contracts. We're looking at the cost of power for a Kenyan today has shot through the roof, and we're looking at this month of April, by the end of it, likely for them to rise again. And we're saying that there's also power that's being produced that's not being used. Quite a lot of it. The government is being slapped with bills of 24 billion shillings and above.
Yes.
Isn't it? So what you're saying is that one of the solutions to this is to terminate the contracts. What would be the consequences of terminating these contracts? And is it something in terms of a shock that the country then will be able to bear if we did, to be able to save this situation?
And let me give you a very, very sincere answer to that. You've mentioned it lightly. We are producing power, geothermal, which is very, very clean and very, very efficient, readily available and very, very cheap. But because we must pay the IPPs, then we tell geothermal, do free up, so don't produce, just shoot your steam on the air, and so that we can take off from a thermal generator because we must pay, because the contract that we signed is take or pay. It doesn't matter whether you take or you don't pay. My take is this: if we would shut down the thermal generator, we will pay damages for that. We'll pay penalties for that, yes. But I'm looking at it from this approach. If we look at the impact on the environmental costs for running one diesel plant, it is very, very expensive. The only problem is that because we have good and plenty of what we would call clean air, we do not look at that as a cost. But if we have to look at the emission in terms of the milligrams emitted into the air, and now because we have comparable figures, look at now the carbon credits that you'd be able to save from not emitting that. Actually, it would be cheaper to terminate them, pay the damages now, and save for a couple of years. Or even maybe go out there and say now, those people who are buying carbon credits, hey, we've shut this down. No? So we have so many carbon credits for the next 12 years, for the next 8 years. However, we also realized that through this inquiry that we need to bring a lot of efficiency, a lot of effectiveness into the Kenya Power. Why? Just because of the old systems that we have, transmission lines, we lose 26% of the power that you produce, I buy from you, but as I'm distributing to the consumer, 26% of it's lost. If we increase a bit of efficiency, we would save 26%. The world best standards are up to 10%, it's acceptable. But 26%, of course, we are on the higher side. So if we were to go with the world standard and lose only maybe 10%, we would bring the power down by not doing anything, only improving the infrastructure by 16%. That is one thing. If we extend our network to the neighboring countries, to Tanzania, to Rwanda, we would be able to export what we are producing in excess so that we do not have to go to geothermal and tell them, free up the steam that you've already invested so heavily. One geothermal borehole costs about 600 million to sink. So once you've tapped that steam, and then you're told, now we do not need your energy, free up because we have to take some few megawatts from a few thermal generators. If we did the line from Olkaria or from Suswa to Mombasa, we would be able to effectively shut down Labai power, which gives us about 90 megawatts of thermal. See, the comparison we are doing is what needs to be done. One is to improve the infrastructure that we have. We need to work on the inefficiencies of Kenya Power. We need to mitigate the 26% we are losing. If we buy a little bit more, because if we are able to export to Tanzania, to the neighboring countries, then we would exploit the potential that we have now, assuming that we have everybody learning. We would be able to exploit the potential we have. And now, because we would be distributing the cost to many units sold, we would be able to bring the production and the cost of production by another 30%. And because one of the things that makes power very, very expensive is the fact that these thermal generators, they run with what you call a peak road. They are not the base road. They just told, okay, now switch on one generator, give us the power. Whether they switch one or none, they're still paid.
Okay. And these things, Senator,
but they're not paid the same amount. There's a difference there.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
So they're paid, let's say, just for information purposes, or they're paid a shilling for operating because they have to have some machine running.
Yes.
And then let's say at peak time they're told, now switch on your other generator so I can give me more power. Then they're paid now 3 bob.
Well,
in that evening.
Now, that's exactly where you have it wrong. What happens is, whether they are producing, whether they are not, whether they are running the machines or not, there is what you call being ready to do that. There is a pay for that. And then there is what they say, this is my capacity. Whether you take it or not, you still pay for it.
So you pay for the entire capacity.
That is it. So if we do not take the entire capacity, we take only 30%, but we pay for 100%, we are losing 70%. If we were to take the 70% and export it to a neighboring country, then it would mean that the Kenyan consumer would only be charged for the 30%, the 70% will be offloading to other market. So that is what makes it very, very expensive.
So, okay. At some point, Kenya Power enters into a contract with a power generating company. Kenya Power says, I need X megawatts.
Yes.
Can you do X megawatts? power generating company called Wamatinga and Latif comes and says, you need 3,000 megawatts, we can do 250. That's our capacity. They say, all right, do the 250. Okay? And then they go to Undu, do for me 500, CT, everybody, until they get their 3,000.
Yes.
Now, Wamatangi and Latif invest to do 250 megawatts. And that's their capacity.
Yes.
Then Kenya Power comes and says, tomorrow, Wamatinga and Latif, just do this. Give me 50. But we invested for 250.
Yes.
Because they told us that they'd like 250.
Yes.
So what's wrong with them paying us for the capacity?
It is not long. I haven't said it's very long.
Okay.
For you as an investor, it's very good. They must pay you. But for us as a country, it's very long.
So
why?
The end consumer.
Why? Because we ought to have sat down and made our planning.
Okay.
Like just the way you're doing here, you have allocated time in the air.
Yeah.
You're saying within 1 hour I'm going to have this.
Yes.
That's what we ought to have done.
Yes.
The infrastructure that we have, we needed to have put a line from Suswa to Mombasa.
Yeah.
Why are we not taking from somebody producing in Athi River, but we are importing from Ethiopia?
Then, Senator, the problem here seems not to be Wamatinga and Latif. The senator is CT who came and contracted us without having worked on his system on where he's going to provide.
Why is
the
that
power.
long? Because we conspire. You are the uptaker. We conspire with you because if you do not take from me, you'll still pay me.
Yeah, okay.
We even conspire with you. Why don't you delay my payment a bit? Because I'll make 18% over and above what you're paying me.
Okay.
So when the deal is on the table, somebody says, yes, we are charging the government 16.8 billion. Why? Because we finished our plant. Not to mention that you are not even in a position to produce. We finished our plant. You are not able to take from us. And because it's take or pay, pay us 16 billion. But because we are very good people, we come to you and tell you, okay, we are charging you 16 billion. Right?
Yeah.
But just pay us out of this 16, pay us 6 billion. The rest we can distribute in the units that consumers are paying for. So who's the culprit here?
The one who bought the power.
No, we all of us.
Everybody's at the table and everybody's eating.
Yes, but the people who start to negotiate, if the investor has put in their facility and they have invested and put the facility and they are ready to produce, the person who bought, if somebody came and said, Wamatinga, I need you to give me 300 students because I'm building a stadium in Qatar. Yes? You provide the 300 students. The person in Qatar is not ready to break ground and start building the stadium. Is that not their problem?
Okay. This is
where is the conspiracy?
So let's assume that these things are established and there actually is a conspiracy, as you say here. The thing here is that there's extra power that has been generated. It is being paid for.
Yes.
This has said, okay, you don't have 16 billion, pay me 6 billion, this to the 10 billion. We will put it on Kenyans. And Kenyans will pay us that 10 billion.
Yes.
For power that's actually not being used.
Yes.
So this is why I'm coming back to the point that you made and saying, why is it so difficult then to say that this extra power can actually be
utilized,
either utilized or sold to those who need it? Why is that such a difficult decision to then make?
Maybe let me even improve on your question. Why is it not even prudent to say we are trying to attract manufacturers? We have power that we are producing in excess. We are paying for a rate even if we do not produce. Why don't we give all industrialists power at 70% discount?
Right.
So that we can encourage even more people to come into invest into the country, even more people to consume power. And you know what would be the effect is that once you're able to create more employment, once you're able to create more industries, then by extension you'll even create more demand. Why? When people have income, you'll go put up your house in Geshagi, you'll go do this. So you'll end up, by the end of the day, we'll end up demanding a little bit more. But why this happens is that because the IPPs, the way they've been set up, it's a conspiracy between the powers that were and the Kenya Power and Pipeline so that they can save on money from Kenyans for the next 20 years,
Kenya
where
Power
you do
Lighting.
not need to break any sweat. You just sit and you know that for the next 20 years, I'll have a couple of billions rolling in every time. Even worse, Kenya Power says, we are the one to regulate the way you consume your fuel. Why? Because fuel cost is a pass-through. You buy fuel, you say my generators are consumed so much, it is passed to the bill.
Yeah.
I know you've looked at a bill and you've said fuel adjustment, forex adjustment.
Yes.
Those are factors that are controlled by Kenya Power because they tell you, A, you've consumed so much, okay, give us your invoice. If I were to make the decision today, I would say, me having the control as the Kenya Power and Pipeline and authority and lighting, me having the authority to control what you're consuming, I would go out there and negotiate for quantity and say, for this 1 year we consume so much heavy oil, we import that collectively. And then I would say, you need 1,000 liters, you need 500 liters, she needs like 200 liters, but I've made already a discount on quantity. But they tell you, no, you buy, but you must buy from these people. But the price, it's determined by the tender submitted. There is no, you say this is the ceiling. So illegalities, and that's why you'll see one company buys the same fuel for 100 shillings, for example. Another company buys the same fuel from another company for 130 shillings, which is a pass-through cost to the consumer. So
Let's
what
take a
prevents
break.
you?
Let's take a break. Continue this conversation. CT has a number of questions. He'll ask them after this break. It's 25 minutes to 8. Senator Wahome Wamatinga is the senator for Nyeri County and chairman of the Standing Committee on Energy. They are currently holding some sittings and hearings investigating what's leading to the high cost of electricity, and that's why he's here to explain this to us. They've been summoning heads of various independent power producers and they have been asking them questions, and we're now asking him those questions.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
With the senator for Nyeri County, Wahome Wamatinga, who's the chairman of the Senate Standing Committee on Energy, CT.
Senator, do I hear you to be saying that Kenya produces more power than it needs?
Well, from the books of Kenya Power, that would seem to be the answer. However, you're looking at the supply of power that we have. It's unreliable, it's irregular, we have regular outages. No, we do not have more than we need, but we produce it ineffectively and inefficiently.
Okay. So, if indeed, I like the word flare up, where you have all this geothermal power being produced, and suddenly we don't need it because we need to tap into power that's being produced by some diesel pumping equipment. And here we are. When you look at the contracts that brought about this situation that we're discussing, what is it about the contracts that you found wanting?
Well, it's the way they were skewed towards the owners of the IPP. They were coined to protect the shareholders. They were coined to make money for the owners and not to serve the interest of the country.
Given that is a contract that the government signed with these IPPs, do these contracts have an escape clause?
No, unfortunately, no. They can only be terminated by the IPPs. The government has no option of terminating. However, we know that there is something that we can. There is a clause, very, very silent. It is not mentioned in that contract, but there is what you call in law force majeure. Today, if you look at our constitution, Article 216, I believe, and says, Article 16, I believe, says that every Kenyan has a right to clean and air and clean water, clean environment.
Clean
we
environment.
can invoke that.
Should be Article 42.
42.
Yeah.
We can invoke that. That is force majeure. And we are exploring. We are talking with lawyers. As I said, we have lawyers in our group. Senator Sifuna is a lawyer. Senator Mugatana is a lawyer. And we are looking at the possibilities of whether we can invoke that. Why? To me, lack of putting an exit clause in any contract isn't in itself an omission. As much as what their argument is that this is a heavy investment, they needed to assure
How heavy
their
is
lenders.
this investment? That leads me. How heavy is it? And what is the period of time within which that investment would have been realized? Because we say, is it a 20-year contract?
Yes, it's a 20-year contract.
Okay.
If they are working with equity of 25 and a capital injection of 75%, you talk about maybe 5-6 years to be able to recoup.
So
your
in
investment.
essence, they've recouped.
Most of them have recouped. You'll be even surprised. Some of them have recouped in what you'll call a build. It's normally supposed to be a build, own, operate, and then transfer.
Yes.
Some of them have been coined with only build, operate, own, and operate.
That's it.
Then the T is left out, and then you ask yourself, was this a typal error or was it an intentional? It is a deliberate, of course. Why is it deliberate? Because at the end of the period, and they've constructed the plant in Kenya Power's land, they'll come and say, hey, gentlemen, we have this plant. If you extend for us a couple of years, we can now transfer it to you.
Who are the people who negotiated this?
Exactly.
Well, the power that was
No. The Ministry,
Yes.
of Energy and the Kenya Power. And
they are the ones who negotiated this contract.
yes.
And it's a continue. It's not a one.
It's not a
one
one,
of it.
but they're all, it's all a kind of a
within
copy
a period of what?
and paste.
20 years, 25 years.
The last we started negotiating about these IPPs in 2005, and then we started successfully signing them. There are some that have run for 6 years, others are almost now expiring, others have run 10 years, 8 years. They're all indifferent. Now, what worries us and why what we're doing is very, very important. There are several others who are holding licenses that have been signed. They're holding power purchase agreements that have been committed to that they'll start selling power to the Kenyan grid from 2024, 2025, and 2026.
So this doesn't end.
No, it has not.
So I have to ask this because the IPPs, I mean, we've sat with some of them here and, of course, very defensive on their right to be able to, purchase and all of this and then be able to,
produce and generate and sell
to
It's a
Kenya.
contract.
Right? Are they, from what you've been able to investigate and see so far, these are Kenyan entities? Are they not? Some of them...
Yes, there are some that are 100% owned by Kenyans.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they had these negotiations with the Ministry of Energy, which is a Kenya government organization institution.
Let me supply
Is it
you.
not?
Let me
Or-
supply you.
Yes.
70% of these IPPs are owned by the same people who signed them.
This is where I was going. Thank you. I think
We
you're
found
clear.
one,
Yeah.
without wanting to mention names here, we found one where the person who initiated the negotiation was then the managing director of Kenya Power and Lighting Company, was later made the PS. So he negotiated on behalf of Kenya Power as
For
the
himself,
MD,
yeah.
and then was later promoted to a PS and committed the government now as the PS. So you'd see in the same document there are two signatures, one as the Kenya Power and Lightning and another one as the PS. You ask yourself, I mean, how? There's a saying in our place.
So I'm sorry, Senator, but I've got to ask you a question
Yes.
here. These things seem to be so clear
Yes.
to the human eye to be able to see exactly what is going on here.
Yes.
I mean, you don't have to really dig very far to find out what you've just told us here. But then there seems to be an almost reluctance to do something about it because you've just said you're not going to mention, so that means you know who the name is.
Yes, we do.
There's reluctance to actually deal with this thing head on, mano el mano, as it were. Why is that?
Well,
Because Kenyans continue to suffer on a daily
Let me
basis.
tell
We
you.
know at the end of April that these bills, as high as they are, will get higher.
Yes.
And here we are saying, we know what the problem is. We know who the people are. But, we're just going to do this song and dance until maybe we can do a force majeure. I mean, come on.
Let me tell you, I was brought up by my grandmother, and she told me something that I want to share with you. She told me, if I ever start a business of selling meat, I should never make a mistake of employing a lion to be the butcher, employing a leopard to be weighing the meat, and just at the door to put a wolf to be handling over the meat.
Put
to
a fox in the hen
customer.
house, yeah.
And she told me, if you do that, that meat will never get home. That's what we did to ourselves. The stakeholders, the Wenyanchi of this country, the Untouchables, And you call them there and they sit there and tell you, yes, it's already signed and there is nothing we can do about it.
But is that really true?
So is there nothing
And
you
it's
can
true,
do
we
about
can do
it?
there's nothing we can do
So
about
why
it.
are we having the conversation?
Why we're having the conversation is, and again here I want to quote Wangari Maathai. She said, the story of the hummingbird. This is a forest that's burning. We have all the elephants with big trucks that can come and help to put out the fire. But there's that hummingbird that says, I may not have the capacity to, but I'll attempt. The bird kept on dashing to the river, getting a drop of water, trying to put it on the fire. Of course the fire can't go out, but we are hoping. In this conversation we're having here, somebody will listen and somebody will say, yes, we need to do something. Because at the end of the day, this is our country. At the end of the day, when we pollute our environment, it's our kids. We have the responsibility, moral responsibility, to ensure that our kids get an environment that's as clean as we found it.
What would happen to Senator Wamatinga if he opened his mouth today, or others on the Energy Committee, Senator for Nairobi, Edwin Sifuna, and other senators who are on that committee? Obviously, you're dealing with these oversight issues on a daily basis.
Yes.
When you have these deliberations, what would happen to you if you opened your mouth and said, well, we know who these individuals are?
Well, in the House, we do that because we enjoy some immunity. Right here, I do not have any immunity. So saying a name, the next thing I would be seeing is a suit being put, because these people, what they've done, they are not stupid. They are also very, very smart. They've opened offshore accounts in Mauritius and other countries, what you call the tax havens. And they're hiding behind this. And you ask them, why would you want to have a Kenyan company that's owned 100% by Kenyans with an account in Mauritius? Now, our loophole in the law, and those are some of the
things. Are they
things.
breaking the law if they have an account in Mauritius?
No, they are not.
Okay.
That's exactly what we're saying. We need to fix it. And we have the opportunity to fix that.
Yeah.
To introduce legislative frameworks that would ensure that even if you open an offshore account, it compels you to reveal to the taxpayer and
The
to the
beneficial
registrar of
owners.
companies
Okay.
who are the directors behind that offshore account. That is where most of the Kenyan money is being hidden.
So then truly there is really nothing. So when we hear that all attempts and effort is being made to actually drive down the cost of living for Kenyans, and we have this happening, then it seems as though it's a fallacy.
Let me tell you, what we've lacked the last 60 years, and we are prayerful and hopeful this time is going to be different, is lack of political goodwill. At the end of the day, when everything is said and done, it's the political goodwill that we have on the table. Right now, I do, and I'm happy, enjoy a very, very good relationship with the Deputy President, having worked with him for the last 17 years, having been his CDF chairman for the last 5 years when he was the MP. I'm enjoying a lot of protection from him. And I have the audacity to do things that my other chairman will not even attempt. Why? I'm going to him and I'm telling me, Your Excellency, sir, this must be done. Now he's told me, get to the bottom of this. Give me the names. And he's told me, we have only one duty. If we win this battle, we have something to say. Even if we don't do anything else, we have left a big footprint in this world that everybody will remember us. We attempted and we did win against the cartels. It is the same thing. I'm also sitting in the Agricultural Committee. I'm sitting in the Environment Committee. I only happen to share the Energy Committee, but the others, I'm just a member. The problem is the same. The cartels we are talking about here, these IPP owners, they are the same people selling coffee, selling fuel, selling tea, selling milk. That's the same guys. And me having been one of the strong opposers of the former regime, having been persecuted, it is my time to make them pay. And I can tell you, that is driving me. That is driving me.
It's giving you all the energy.
It gives me all the energy. My wife asked me, where are you getting the energy? I said, hello. What I have gone through the last 5 years, because I just went to a certain side of the government, now it is the payback time. And I'm looking at them and telling them, you will
the
pay.
music. Senator, I hear everything that you're saying, but I hear that the focus of your investigation right now appears just to be going after personalities or individuals who own these companies, who are in office then, who may have colluded without necessarily showing at what point they colluded, where the law has been broken, and therefore then taking legal action against them. At the same time, I'm not hearing much attention being given to the inefficiencies of those who have duty of care to Kenyans and those who have fiduciary duty to Kenyans. This is the Kenya Power itself, because it is owned by Kenyans to a large extent. Kenya Power, you've told us, is distributing power to us, buying 100% of power. 70% of it is coming from KenGen, and KenGen is giving us through hydro, through geothermal, through some solar stations that they have and all, and 30% coming from IPPs. The largest IPP is Lake Turkana Wind Power, largest wind farm in Africa. So it's not even polluting the environment. It's clean. But then 26% of this power that Kenya Power is taking, it's losing through system losses, left, right, and center. Your attention is, let's go and cancel these contracts for the 30%, instead of shifting your attention in how do we improve the efficiency to save this 26%.
Well, I think there's something that you didn't get, and let me try to retrace where I mentioned it. What we said is that we are looking at the possibility of increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of Kenya Power so that we can save on the 26% to come to the acceptable standard of losses of 10%. We would save 16%. We also said it is indeed Kenya Power and the producers who sit down like the way we are seated and conspire where are we going to take what, because you'd make more money without doing anything and we would share the spoil. So there is no IPPs and Kenya Power. It's one and the same thing, only that they're putting different jackets at different times.
Will your report be able to demonstrate this clearly?
Yes, oh yes,
show us that this Kenya Power, whose shareholders are X% government, X% private sector.
Let me tell you, that is what I'm going at.
Senator, you know why we're asking this
And
question?
why you say that we are looking at the people, we are not looking at the personalities. These personalities, incidentally, happen to be the former PSs in Kenya Power, to be the former CSs in Kenya Power. Some of them, the Kenya in the Ministry of Energy. Some of them, in the former regimes, the power that was, fortunately, that past tense. They are the main stakeholders in these and the main players in this industry. You'd ask yourself, why would a company today start as company A, enters into a power purchasing agreement with Kenya Power, then mutates itself into another company and changes the shareholding from the initial shareholders to incorporate some other people who are in Mauritius? And what they know is that we do not have any legal process of getting the names in Mauritius. But there is a trick. That one I'm not going to say how we're going to do it. But we are almost getting there.
But then, will your report be able to actually show us where the malpractice is?
Yes.
In this particular.
Yes.
I'll remind you, the very famous attempt to impeach the then Minister for Agriculture, William Ruto, in the National Assembly.
Yes.
He was the Minister for Agriculture, and there was a whole scandal about him trading in maize. And in his defense, he stood on the floor of the House and he said, Mr. Speaker, I'm being accused of trading in maize. Maize is not contraband. No part of the law in this country bars me from doing business or trading in maize. Where is the issue? Will your report come and start telling us, there was conspiracy? Will it actually show us
conflict of interest,
where that conspiracy is?
Yes. If they have conflict of interest,
and prove that these are the owners of these companies.
Yes.
And this is how they conspired.
Let me tell you.
So it is not just all hot air.
Let me tell you. It is not a walk in the park, as you're putting it, because some of these people who coined these contracts, some of them are top brains in legal field. I can tell you, in things that you do, no matter how careful you are, and again I'll put a saying in my community, in every butchery there is always a stain of blood, no matter how careful you are. And I can tell you, we are already finding them. Like now, how do you explain an independent power producer? One of the shareholders is the pension fund for Kenya Power Enlightening.
I mean, you could ask that question. You could also ask, you have members of parliament today. I believe there's one member of parliament who has the highest shareholding in Kenya Power today, and is part of government. And so one would ask the question, how can you be comfortable with that happening and you being the biggest shareholder in the power company that you have problems with today?
Let me tell you, the beauty about this conversation we're having here. Some people out there, people who have moral obligation to take care of the country, are saying, hold on, I have shares in Kenya Power, but I do not want to hold them anymore because these people are milking Kenyan dry.
Then would you ask your colleague to offload his shares in the company?
I won't ask my colleague to do that, but I would appeal to the moral obligation of every Kenyan. Moving forward,
Senator,
we have a responsibility in this country to take care of our country for the sake of our future generation.
When all this is revealed, then what?
When all this is revealed, what do I want to achieve? I would want to leave a footprint in this country.
Beyond the footprint, how will that benefit the citizens of this country?
How will it bring down the cost of power?
Already, let me tell you, some of these IPPs are already saying, let's renegotiate. Let's sit down and negotiate on how we can bring the cost down.
That's what they're
so the
saying.
conversation is already there. So even if we are not able to do anything else, we will have achieved renegotiation of the contracts, which has skewed now to their favor. If we are able to bring some balance into the contract, then we'll have achieved a lot.
Okay.
And that to me is a lot done. However, should we not be able to achieve anything in this one, the lessons learned, the loopholes that were there, moving forward, we'll be able to make sure that we do not do the same mistakes again. Again, that's also a win for the Kenyans.
It'll be mitigation for future.
Yeah, for future years.
Senator, thank you very much for joining us. We've heard Senate hearings before and even National Assembly hearings before, promising all fire and brimstone.
Yes.
Oh, COVID billionaires.
Yes.
Oh, MES scandal.
Names will be mentioned.
Yes.
Join that list. Senator Wahome Wamatinga is the Senator for Nyeri County, Chairman of the Energy Committee in Senate. Thank you very much. Keep it here for more conversations.